So David Pakman decided to put out a video, and not only a video on YouTube, which is his normal thing, but he put it out on Twitter, which means he really wants this to get out because he rarely tweets his content on Twitter. He wants you to go see it on the various platforms. But this he decided to tweet out, and I'll read the caption before I play the video. It says, "True leftists don't do apologetics, maybe I'm just going to say apologia, for Hamas." And this is David Pakman. So let's listen to David Pakman's establishment propaganda. Let's listen.
We are actual leftists. We don't support authoritarian regimes. We don't support terrorism. We don't support violence of any kind. And that includes violence coming from Israel to innocent Palestinians. We don't support movements that subjugate women or LGBT people or those who say, I don't want to be part of this religion anymore. We feel terribly for the Palestinians living under Hamas. Lots of the people
living under
supporting Hamas in the West would be killed by Hamas or at least subjugated. And that's lost on many of the so-called progressives on the left. So we need to make sure that we don't ignore death and suffering on any side. On any side, it's a disaster. It also has to be recognized that after a terrorist attack, countries will defend themselves. Apply what happened here with Hamas to anywhere around the world, and we would be saying, well, the victims have to defend themselves. Now, do they defend themselves in an appropriate way? Do they even go out? You know, when we were attacked by Al-Qaeda and went to Iraq, did that make sense? No, it made absolutely no sense. And so we can still be critical. We can still be discerning and all of these different things. But the attacks on me as I thought you were a progressive, I want to hear which progressive value I'm not espousing.
You're not espousing colonial settler. You're not espousing a perspective that is against colonial settler project called Israel. I would say that's a progressive policy that you're not espousing, David. But let's replay it, and we're going to take it point by point.
We don't support authoritarian regimes.
We don't support authoritarian regimes. We don't? Now, I'm going to ramble off a bunch of names. Do you think Israel is an authoritarian regime? Do you think Saudi Arabia is an authoritarian regime? Do you think the United States is an authoritarian regime? So all of those I would consider, but okay, let's skip over that part. Let's see what the next part he says here.
In regimes. We don't support terrorism.
We don't support terrorism. Do we not support terrorism in Yemen? Did we not fund that through Saudi Arabia? Did we not support terrorism in all sorts of forms, from, Syria to Somalia to Afghanistan? Are you just talking about a particular type of terrorism? Because starving people, I would consider that terrorism through sanctions. Let's listen to what else he says.
We don't support violence of any kind. And that
you don't support violence of any kind except for when it comes to sending weapons to Ukraine, David Pakman. We don't support violence of any kind except for sending, what did they just send over? Destroyers, some sort of ship they just sent over to Israel. But we don't support violence. Okay, so let's listen.
And that includes violence coming from Israel to innocent Palestinians.
Now, this is where you see how he has a caveat of innocent Palestinians. Now, I'm being picky. Now, he's going to go into detail why I can say I feel comfortable with saying he's using the word innocent Palestinians to sort of chop up who should gain our humanity, which this is a better way of saying which Palestinians should gain our humanity. So let's listen.
We don't support movements that subjugate women or LGBT people or those who...
Now, so this is where he starts to conflate things. So he's saying subjugate women and LGBTQ people. He's talking about people who are part of Hamas who may be Muslim, and his interpretation of what they view about women and LGBTQ, he's saying this is what he's saying about them. But he's acting like Hamas, who believe these things, and I agree, they do believe these things, that Hamas is simply, I'm not going to say simply, but is defending itself. and defending its people and have been elected by the people of Palestine.
Who say, I don't want to be part of this religion anymore. We feel terribly for the Palestinians living under Hamas.
We feel terribly about the Palestinians living under Hamas, not we feel terribly about the Palestinians who are forced to live in Gaza, who are forced to live in an open air. Now, people are saying prison, but we are updating our language to say concentration camp because prison implies you did something wrong and they didn't. This is a concentration camp. So let's let David continue.
Lots of the people supporting Hamas in the West would be killed by Hamas.
So he's saying the left, who, now I wouldn't get strongly to say the word support, but the West, who isn't going after Hamas the way that the establishment wants us to, that's who he's referring to. He's saying those people. So if you're transgender and you're saying free Palestine, those people will want to kill you. That's what he's saying. What does the people's belief who are being killed, and I'm granting him this argument. I'm just saying for the sake of argument. What the belief of people being killed have to do with whether or not they should be murdered or not? So unless you're saying because what they believe, so let's say they are against transgender rights. Let's say they are against homosexuality. You're saying they should be killed for that? What are you saying exactly, David?
Or at least subjugated, and that's lost on many of the so-called progressives on the left. So
you should be against the Palestinian struggle because certain Muslims who are Palestinians are against gay people? So that's a very unusual way to deliver your personal humanity to this world. It's dependent on something.
We need to make sure that we don't ignore death and suffering on any side. On any side, it's a disaster.
Give credit to the suffering that's happening to the colonial settlers, is what he wants us to do. We're giving too much sympathy to Palestinians and not enough to Israel. The Israeli settlers is what he's saying. He's upset about that.
Disaster. It also has to be recognized that after a terrorist attack, countries will defend themselves.
After a terrorist attack, countries will defend themselves. I find it very funny how people in Western sovereignist countries, they always skip over the atrocity when they start the timeline of events. Like with Ukraine, we skip over 2014, the coup. Like with the indigenous people, we skip over the stealing of their land. Like we skip over all of that. Now let's start history now in sovereignty countries. Let's start all of these things we want to apply to other countries. We started after the shit we did.
Apply what happened here with Hamas to anywhere around the world.
Let's do that. Somebody comes in your house and takes over your house. A person who lives with you, a roommate, decides, hey, this shit ain't happening. I'm about to fight these intruders by any means necessary, and they might use tactics you wouldn't use. But let's not miss the point that Hamas, by whatever means, whether you agree with it or not, would not be doing what they're doing if Israel wasn't here as a settler colonial project. This is why they have to sell it as a religious war. Because it's not because I'm still in their house, it's because of my religion.
And we would be saying, well, the victims have to defend themselves. Now,
yeah, the victims are not Israel. It's Palestine.
Do they defend themselves in an appropriate way? Do they even go out? When we were attacked by Al-Qaeda and went to Iraq, did that make sense? No, it made absolutely no sense. And so we can still be critical. We can still be discerning and all of these different things. But the attacks on me as I thought you were a progressive,
apparently the reason he put this video out on Twitter is because he's being attacked on social media for being a clown, for being a progressive, except for Palestine. So this is his response video to that.
I want to hear which progressive value I'm not espousing.
I've already said it. It's several. You're not espousing just basic human rights. You're not espousing right to self-determination. You're not espousing the right for a country to be sovereign. That's Palestine. You're not espousing any opposition to a colonial settler project, any of that. You asked for a list. I gave you a list, David.